And hello, everyone, and welcome into a special edition of the podcast Tigers Tonight. It's one of my favorite things that we do each football and basketball offseason, and it's a segment called Why I Coach. And we have a very special guest with us here this evening. He is the new defensive coordinator for the University of Memphis, Matt Barnes. Coach Barnes, welcome in.
Thank you very much. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, welcome to the Bluff City. And you kind of have a bit of a roundabout way to get here. You started at Delaware Valley back in 2009 as a running backs coach. You moved over to West Virginia Wesleyan. Then you spent some time as a GA at Florida. Then you pretty much moved to the Big Ten. You went to Michigan for a season as a assistant, and then you moved to Maryland, special teams coordinator, and then you went to Ohio State, and you have now made your way to the Bluff City. So before Brian gets started with the tough, hard-hitting questions, how much barbecue have you had to eat?
Not enough, I'll tell you that.
You're awful thin. We'll change that by the time you leave here. So we'll start with Brian.
I've been eating it just about every other day, so it's not like I haven't had it, but I'm a barbecue fanatic. I love it, and this barbecue here in Memphis is unreal. So every chance I get, I'm getting ribs or pulled pork or something delicious. So
that's what I like to hear. So Brian, we'll let you get us started here with the tough, real questions.
Sure, Coach. Welcome to Memphis, and if you could, before we start talking about coaching career, go back to your high school days. What did you play in high school? What sports? What positions were you? I know there's a lot of talk these days. A lot of people just play one sport. So were you a one sport guy? Did you play multiple sports?
Growing up, I played everything. I mean, you name it, I played it. Some more organized than others. By the time I got to high school, I was just so in love with football that I really just played football, and then I did run track a couple of years, but that was just, to try and stay in shape or get faster for football. Really, and I have few regrets in life, but if I could go back and do it all over again, I would have played everything. I mean, outside of football, I would have been in two sports in every season. I would have been trying to fit two in the spring and two in the winter and so on and so forth. But and that's something now in recruiting I always ask, do you play multiple sports and things like that? And I love those guys that compete year round. But played football, played mostly fullback and what we called strong side or strong safety, which most folks would know now as like a Sam linebacker, outside linebacker. Was fortunate to be on a really a part of a great program, a rich tradition there. At one point, our high school had 50 consecutive wins and 4 straight state titles, and got to be a part of one of those. And back in those days, I mean, just to be on that team and run out on that field, I mean, that meant everything to myself and my peers. So really cool experience.
So I'm a hockey fan. So in Ohio, were you in Maryland at that time? Where was that at?
So I grew up I'm originally from Maryland. Yes.
Was there a hockey presence? I have to get my hockey reference in here.
Yeah. Hey, throw it in there. One of the few sports that I love to watch on TV other than football is hockey. It's just so fast paced and awesome. And I've only had a chance to attend a couple of games, but they are maybe the best sport to watch live. But a little bit, the Caps were not great growing up. Honestly, they didn't have a ton of good seasons. But we would play, street hockey and things like that out in the cul-de-sac. And, if you've ever seen Wayne's World, game on, game off, that kind of.
Yep. Definitely. And go ahead and talk about going into your college playing days. How did it come about that you went to, is it Salisbury? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes. So I actually transferred to Salisbury. I went to out of high school, I went to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Had a great experience there. Long story short, it was too expensive, so I transferred. My older brother had gone to Salisbury and had a great career there, and several guys that I went to high school with were there. And at that time, again, I was leaving a school that I thought was my dream school because it was too much money, and Salisbury was it was priced well. We'll go with that. So it was a little bit friendlier on the student loans and things like that, and ended up being a great fit. And I had an awesome experience there.
Yeah, I noticed you guys went 9-2 the first year, and then same thing next year, 9-2. If you could, that ECAC championship game, you guys were down 17-0 at halftime, and then you blew them out in the second half. What was, talk about that game, and specifically what did you do in the second half?
Oh man, I don't know that. I don't know that I could pinpoint one thing that we did. What I'll tell you is, and I played defense, but our offense ran like Navy's triple option. And it's funny because I was just talking about this the other day with somebody, where I saw several games over the course of my career where it was like, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and then 60 points consecutively. Those guys that hang their hat on the triple option, once they figure out what it is that you're doing, they're all really, really good at adjusting it. And I think that's what we did. And we're able to get a couple stops on defense. And, college football is such a momentum game. So once we had the momentum back on our side, we were rolling.
Last thing for me, now I'll throw it up once we do the post edit, but your photo from your junior to your senior season, it looks like you were happy taking the photo your junior year, but it looks like you were really pissed off when you took the picture for your senior year. Was there any story behind that?
Man, I'd have to look. There's no telling. There's no telling. A lot of those stories, let's just be thankful that they were and everybody
Social
having
media.
and everybody recording stuff on their phones. So there's no telling what led to photograph 1 or photograph 2. But I'm sure there's a pretty good story there somewhere.
Gotcha. All right, Larry.
First of all, Coach, strong safeties are the backbone of the defense, and don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise. And also your experience with the triple option is going to help us with Navy.
I hope so.
I hope so too. The 600-pound gorilla in the room for our fans is this year our defense was criticized for being passive, especially when we would get a lead. Happened several times earlier in the season. Tell the fans what your philosophy is, not necessarily with the lead, but just in general, what your philosophy is as far as defensive play calling.
Yeah, I think I think you've got to be multiple. If you go back to the early part of my career, I was fortunate enough to be an offensive coordinator, and we played against some really strong defenses, but I know from those days I felt like, calling plays on offense, if I knew where you were going to be, I could get us into a good play. Now we may or may not have executed the play, but I could always get us into a good play if I knew where the defense was going to be. So you look at that from the other side of the ball, and you just have to be multiple. You have to be able to change things up and give different pictures to the decision makers on offense, being the play caller and the quarterback. You got to present them with different looks. But I think in general, play calling wise, I really like to be aggressive. I like to pressure and try to just do exactly that, apply pressure to the offense. I want that quarterback to feel like he's going to get hit every time he drops back to pass. And, what we know that we've got to be able to play great coverage, which can lead to sacks, and we've got to be able to pressure, which can lead to turnovers. So in general, I would say we will walk a fine line of running as much defense as we can to try to present different looks. But also remaining simple enough that we give our players a great chance to go play fast and with confidence and execute what we have called. But definitely want to be as aggressive as we can, as much as we can.
So you've been quite a few places, but every coach has the answer to this. Who was the coach or the teacher that influenced you the most in maybe even in life, not just necessarily coaching, but who taught you the most and some things you've taken away, kind of nuggets from that person?
Yeah, man, really, really hard for me to say just one. I had a high school coach that I was very close with. I'm still very close with. He had a tremendous impact on me, and He was like the first person that really, I've been in love with football and X's and O's and all that stuff for such a long time. He was the first person that I could really go to cultivate that, for lack of a better way to put it. And then got to college, and my defensive coordinator, Rob Disbennett, was same way. You know, he had to kick me out of his office a time or two so he could get some work done, and I would just always wear him out with questions. And talked to Rob a week or two ago, and we remained close. And then, you know, I'd say my first year as a graduate assistant, I was with some guys that are highly regarded in the profession, that probably have had, you know, as a combined group, have definitely had the biggest impact on me. Dan Quinn is a name that, you know, most people in the business now would recognize. You know, Cowboys defensive coordinator this past year. Will Muschamp, who will now be the defense coordinator at the University of Georgia, was in there. He was the head coach there at the time. DJ Durkin, who will now be the defensive coordinator at Texas A&M, and Travaris Robinson, who we refer to as T-Rob, will now be the defensive backs coach at Alabama, and several other guys in there that were, you know, really, really sharp, and that room really molded me. I did not have a lot of experience, or really any experience, coaching on the defensive side of the ball prior to that. So I learned a ton of defense and a ton about coaching and just how to conduct yourself as a professional.
Another one for me is I'll go back to your playing days. What was on your iPod? What did you listen to? What type of music that you know, you got ready for a game for?
What type of music to get ready for a game? You know, I'd say probably a lot of the same stuff I'd be listening to now. I struggle to get into new music sometimes. Not that it's not good. I'm just so set on the things that I like. It would have been heavy DMX. I don't know if you guys listen to any DMX. It would have been a lot of DMX in there. I grew up on 90s hip hop, rap, and R&B. I don't know how much R&B I would have been listening to prior to a game. So, you know, definitely DMX and you know, probably Nas and you know, I was big on the rap scene pregame.
Awesome. So another one for me here. Early September of last year, you go into Coach Day's office, and he says, Coach Barnes, we're going to have you call the plays for the rest of the season for the Ohio State Buckeye defense. What was kind of the first thought that ran through your mind when that decision was made, and how did that conversation kind of take place?
Well, it did not take place like that. That's what I can tell you. You know, those were tenuous times. You know, you know, the name of the game now in college football is you know, win or you're out, and obviously there's a tremendous amount of stress at every level, and certainly at that place, you know, you're very much in the limelight and in the forefront of the college football landscape. So, you know, there's a lot of pressure there. We didn't play as well defensively early in the year as we felt like we should be, and just kind of as a staff rallied together, and so, you know, Coach Day said that he wanted to make some changes, and it wasn't, you know, as matter of fact as you put it. You know, it's kind of something we worked through over a few days initially to see exactly how we wanted things to go, and really it took, you know, several weeks to really get things ironed out to run in a more normal fashion. I mean, that's you know, we could sit down over 10 or 12 beers and hash that one all the way out, but that's kind of the once over on it.
So you mentioned Maryland earlier, and specifically DJ Durkin, and you were there in 2018. That was a tough year, but you ended up calling plays that year as well. How did that experience affect or influence what happened this year? Was there a correlation there?
It'd be a great question for Ryan Day. I'm not 100% sure, you know, what his mindset was on if that came into play at all for him, that I had that experience before. I tell you, it's I don't know, for lack of a better word, ironic, I guess, that I had never really seen that happen where there's a coordinator change sort of, during the season. And I've been a part of it twice. So it just was so, both instances were just such outliers and just happened to be at both places. And when those things occurred, and, for me, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't overwhelmed initially. I certainly was. I mean, there was a lot going on there and plenty that needed to be fixed and a tremendous amount of pressure. But I kind of said, okay, I've been here before and I can do this. And, certainly made plenty of mistakes along the way. But, in the end, I think we improved as a defense. And so, yeah, just really strange, truthfully, that's happened in two different instances. And, so, more than reflecting back on those, I could just say how thankful and appreciative I am to have this opportunity where I can sit down with an awesome staff and we can build a defense together and have a chance to iron things out through the spring and tweak them in the summer and hit training camp with a defense that we're ready to go play in the season. So super excited for that.
Well, so that was sort of a segue to my question, and you kind of sort of answered it. So this is going to be your first time as the defensive coordinator, and you get to set up sort of all the way through spring into fall camp and then into the season. So now you get to set up the defense, and you're not sort of running, I don't want to say somebody else's because that's not really how it works as a staff, but still, you are the defensive coordinator, and so you get to sort of put everybody into place and work out the plays, etc. I'm sure that's exciting, but how is that going to be different for you when you're calling plays in the fall?
Great question. I'd say, short answer, time will tell, but long answer, I mean, this is something that, I never got into coaching for fame and certainly there's plenty of recognition out there these days or money. And there's certainly plenty of that out there these days. For me, I've always just loved the game. I love the scheme. I love the challenge of on either side of the ball of trying to, beat the coach on the other side. And so for me to have the opportunity to really do it the right way and again, with our staff, design a defense that we feel like can be aggressive and make the other team play left-handed and sort through all the personnel and things, just do it the right way, the way it should be done. I'm thrilled. I really can't wait. We've been recruiting here the last 2 weeks and next week we'll have a chance to sit down really as a staff for not the first time, but for an extended period of time. It will be the first time we really have a chance to dive into football and think about what schemes we want to implement and what players give us the best chance and all those things. So very few things in my life have I ever been this level of excited for. So it's a lot to look forward to.
Last question for me. I know it's a recruiting season. I don't want you to talk about specific, folks, but what do you look for in a prospect, in a player, and how much do you enjoy the art of recruiting?
I love the evaluations and the relationship building. Those are the best things. The travel and being away from your family and those things can be harder. I have a 2-year-old little boy and a wife that I've spent some time away from and anxious to get back to them. But I'd say the things that I look for are I love competitors, and it shows through on the film. I mean, are they trying to get to the ball or are they pursuing the ball like their life depends on it? I love to hear the backstories. You'd be surprised at how many of these kids have overcome, just some of the craziest things in their life. I've been on the road. What's today? Wednesday, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, in 3 days, I've heard stories about guys that are team captains now and will ultimately go on to receive scholarships to play football that were at one point living out of their car with their mom. They were homeless, and that's at least 3 guys now I've heard in 3 days. So, those things are so cool to hear those stories. In addition to that, back to the football side, again, I love to see guys that just play with a chip on their shoulder and, maybe might be a little bit raw, but they're trying to knock somebody's face mask off. And when they get there and running as hard as they can to get there. And physically, we like guys with length. We like guys with twitch, sort of, sudden movement skills, and athletes. We want to get as much speed and long athletic guys that can play with twitch and a chip on their shoulder. And if they're 5, 10, 15 pounds too light, we'll get that when they get here. But those are the guys we like to recruit, and we want a defense filled with really aggressive guys that again are long and athletic.
So my 40 time is like in 15 minutes, so that leaves me out. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I made up for being small by being slow when I played. So my last question for you is, and this is always like asking the dad who his favorite child is, but who is the best player you've ever coached?
Chase Young.
Wow, that was, well, not that I'm disagreeing, but that was kind of the very sudden answer there.
Yeah, he's a freak of nature. He's just a freak. He looks. If you ever seen the movie Avatar, he looks like an avatar. He doesn't look like anybody else you've ever met. He is a big physical, and I'll tell you what else, a hell of a guy. Really, really nice guy. Very modest. Great to have a conversation with. Just an awesome person. I didn't coach Chase directly. He was a defensive lineman. I can give you defensive backs that come to me. There's been a bunch of good ones. One that really stands out to me is Darnell Savage. Coach Darnell at the University of Maryland. He's now with the Packers. Obviously Jeff Okuda here in the last couple of years at Ohio State. Been some really good ones, but the best player I've been around on the team with that we had a chance to coach was Chase Young.
What areas did you primarily recruit for Ohio State? Did you guys break it up geographically like most places do?
At Ohio State, it's such a national recruiting base. It's very little regional recruiting going on. You technically get a sheet of paper when you're first hired that has your areas, but if there's if there were no defensive backs there, I probably wasn't going. I remember our linebackers coach at one point was like, took a Sunday flight to Hawaii to be back to Utah on Tuesday, to be at Florida on Wednesday, to be in New Jersey on Thursday, and just crazy stuff like that.
So the final question, and the single most important question we're going to ask today, you've been here for a few weeks now, wet ribs or dry ribs?
Oh man. I've been dry since I've been here.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited about
the correct answer, by the way.
That's the right answer, by the way.
I like wet.
Get out of here, you northern guys.
Yeah, Yankee.
They can be dry or wet or anywhere in between, and I'll be happy to eat them.
Yeah, muddy ribs. So, Coach,
we'll have to introduce you to Muddy.
Yeah, Muddy's a whole different ball game. But
okay.
We're really excited to look forward to what you guys have for us this fall and the spring. And we're just happy you're here. And thanks a lot for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate your time, and look forward to meeting you guys in person sometime.
Awesome.
Soon.
Appreciate it.
Coach Matt Barnes, the new defensive coordinator at the University of Memphis. And that'll conclude this episode of Why I Coach. Thanks again for joining us. John Maddox for Larry Marley and Brian Moss, the best co-host in all the land. Go Tigers, go.